We are live at you with five. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Gavin Richard Presents here, only on my channel, G2786, and even on my Facebook page. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you all are doing blessed and safe. And right now, guys, you've seen this gentleman to my right, or left rather. He's actually, well, it's my right. He's actually a author. You've seen him dozens of times here on this channel. He's a friend of the channel. Please welcome Shawn James, author of The Man Crisis, as well as the John Haynes series. How you doing, Shawn?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. And you've had some new books you've been working on and a couple of other projects that have dropped. Why don't you tell everybody your projects that have dropped recently?
Well, the latest projects that have dropped are the ISIS, The Main Event, and John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, which are now, and they're on Amazon right now. You can pick them up in paperback and Kindle format. I'm going to leave a link in the chat to both of those. And I have upcoming books that are coming. I have the Eastern Blast from the Past, which is coming to Amazon soon. And I also have the Eternal Night novel, which is a vampire novel. So Eternal Night's on pre-order.
Yeah.
And those are the projects. And I'm also getting ready to launch in Eastern Blast from the Past, the first Eastern comic book. So that you're going to get the first comic from SJS Direct in that book as well. But that's what I'm working on right now. And I also did a Temptation Comics refresh.
Right, and you've had the Dark Succubus series that you talked about.
Well, that's part of the John
Haynes stuff. That's part of John Haynes. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, that's what's up, man. It's always good to have you on the show, man. There's a lot that's been going on, and you've been busy, and I've seen you've done some of your recent videos. I'm just going to get right into it right now, and that's this issue with. Excuse me 1 second. I need a drink. Yeah, this is the issue with the Chris Cooper, Amy Cooper situation. You've commented on it. I haven't had a chance to as of yet, but I want to go ahead and talk with everyone about that. If you all could take a look at, I'm about to show you this video. Chris Cooper, of course, was the black man, and I use that term lightly. Yeah, it is what it is. He was a black man. He identifies as LGBTQ, right, Shawn?
Yeah.
So, well, finish what you were about to say.
No, I just said that he identifies as alphabet. So.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, his partner is white. And what's happened recently, guys? Y'all remember last month? This woman who you see in the video clip here, her name is Amy Cooper. There's no relation, but she called 911 on this man. And I'll just let the video play for itself.
Being threatened by a man in the ramble. Please send the cops immediately.
An unexpected development in the case of that white woman who was charged this week with filing a false police report claiming she was being threatened by a black man in Central Park 6 weeks ago.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
The case against Amy Cooper, who says she is not guilty, may now be in jeopardy after birdwatcher Christian Cooper announced he would not testify. In a statement released last night, Christian Cooper declares Amy Cooper has suffered enough. He said bringing her more misery just seems like piling on. If the district attorney feels the need to pursue charges, he should pursue charges, but he can do that without me. Attorney Stacey Snyder says Cooper's refusal to testify could doom the case.
Without Christian Cooper there to provide his testimony to the DA's office, they don't have a case.
Well, I don't know why they wouldn't have a case, because it was actually seen on the internet. All they have to do is pull it up online, because it was the sister who shared the video clip, although they may argue authentication purposes. But everybody knows from her interviews, in even her own statements that she has stated publicly, Cooper has admitted to doing this. And Shawn, just your take on what you saw and what this I'm trying to be nice with my words tonight, but not, you know what I mean.
I know. Well, I'm deeply disgusted by what Amy Cooper participated in. And I'm more disgusted by Christian Cooper's actions, because Christian Cooper's actions come from a place of pure cowardice, and it shows that he's more loyal to white supremacy than he is the black community, because your Christian Cooper, he doesn't understand the danger he's putting black men in by not pressing charges, because here we have an opportunity to set a legal precedent
Right.
that insists that a black man's life matters. And here is this coward who, instead of him standing to establish the standard for other black men, he stands for white supremacy and wants to give the Central Park Karen a pass, really thinking more about her needs instead of understanding this woman was practically planning on lynching you and practically planning on murdering you. And you're going to sit there and say she suffered enough. No, this isn't about her suffering. This is about us getting justice. This is about establishing a legal precedent and establishing a hard boundary that these Karens understand that they cannot cross as related to treating black men. And this coward, he, instead of trying to stand for justice, is looking to get favor from his white slave masters at Harvard and all these corporations, instead of thinking about the bigger picture as related to black life. Because we cannot sit here and march and protest talking about black life mattering, and then we have a coward like this backing away, showing us how he doesn't even value his own life and doesn't value the lives of other black men. And it's a shame that this so-called Harvard-educated black man isn't smart enough to go out here and stand up for what's right. He's supposed to be our so-called best and brightest, and he's coming across as dumber than a box of rocks, because he's going to give this white female, who again was going to lynch him and use the police as her own Klan on demand to kill him, and he's going to value her life more than his. And it goes back to something that Malcolm X said about boss, we sick. This is a codependent Negro who is codependent on white supremacy and codependent to the point where he's practically willing to sacrifice his own life in order to let this white supremacist system remain the standard and allow their laws to be the law of the land. That's the biggest shame about this whole thing, where he's talking about he's not cooperating. He's not understanding how this is going to affect other black men, because the message he's sending is a black man's life does not matter. A black man's life has no value, and that when pressed, a black man will not take a leadership role, and a black man won't stand up for himself. This alphabet coward, if he's supposed to represent us, we need to push back, because this man cannot represent us. He's the same type of jellyback as your Botham Jeans brother, and that standard cannot be what is expected.
What did you call him?
Jellyback. It's something my brother calls a lot of these weak guys out here, and he's a weak man. He's weak. He's soft. And
beta male.
Yeah, complete beta. I mean, here you have again. We're demanding that punishment be a standard, and as related to black men with George Floyd. And here's this guy who practically caves in all of what these protests were about, caves in everything that we all fought for the last couple of weeks, and practically destroys all the progress that black people were working for, showing us that he just is a, really, as I see it, reprehensible human being.
He's a fucking punk.
Yeah. And
that's the way I look at it.
He destroys everything that black people have been fighting for. I mean, why are we protesting if we've got jokers like this who are looking for apologies and not looking to mess up people's lives? I could care less about Amy Cooper's life. She was trying to kill this man, and he's sitting up there worried about her life. Just shows me how weak he is, how cowardly he is, and he disgusts me.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Shawn, but what I would just was, if you're finished, I could just tune in. All right. Well, my thing is this: the time this happens, of course, all this stuff with this, was around the same week George Floyd. If not, I believe it was the same week when George Floyd was killed.
That week.
Well,
Almost the beginning of
George,
that week, and then in the end, George Floyd was killed.
it was the end of the week. Well, it was the same week.
Yeah.
And so with all of that going on, and I remember it distinctly because they even did a news special on it, featured with Gayle King did that little half-assed presentation on Black Lives Matter, that little special that CBS did. She was the host of it, and they interviewed him. Remember something, his sister was the one that actually leaked the video out. He did not leak it out. The sister actually showed more gumption about this incident more than he even did. And he's this bird out there bird watching and doing all of this stuff. All he did was ask the woman to get a leash on the dog, and right then and there, and even the lieutenant police, the deputy chief of police, who's a black man up there in New York that I believe you're familiar with, he actually was the one that stated he was even shocked and appalled at what she did, because she used race clearly in that 911 call when there was no threat. Now, what's interesting is that same deputy police chief felt that there was bigger fish to fry and that there were no charges that should have been brought. But from police experts that I have even spoken with, they felt that she needed to be charged because because she put every black man that was in Central Park that day at that time in danger by making that 911 call. And when you have someone doing this stuff, they need to be made an example of. No different than when they make an example out of us. The Me Too movement.
I have to agree with that.
Yeah, the Me Too movement has made examples out of countless. Look at Bill Cosby, Gooding Jr. They're the only black men that are actually being prosecuted under that. You look at countless situations when you have every situation that you can think of when they want to do, I guess, a push or so forth, they do it on black people. Even the stuff with this coronavirus, we're talking about using vaccines on blacks. I think Melinda and Bill Gates were even talking about trying to make it affordable for black people to get the vaccine. They're even talking about black people getting the vaccines first. But, that's a whole nother conversation. But my point is that we are always the guinea pigs whenever they want to do something whenever they want to push something in America. And here, when we have an opportunity to set an example, to push, which is that, and really to perceive justice, because her actions could have resulted in someone's death. Thank God it didn't. But we have this on the ropes, and this sucker, because that's what he is. He's a sucker. He goes ahead and wants to do this whole forgiveness tip, and I don't know what it is with black people and forgiveness. This whole forgiving, I can forgive you, I forgive you. The so-called founding fathers of America, who were white men that claimed to be Christians, they also killed people as well when they fought in the American Revolution because they were being unjustly taxed by the British. So, I'm pretty sure they were not thinking about forgiveness when they were fighting the redcoats. I'm sure George Washington wasn't thinking about that. I'm pretty sure Jefferson wasn't thinking about that, or Adams, whoever, and so on. So, I say all of this in closing. We've got to weed out the cowards. And I'm glad he's actually coming forward saying this, because we know where he stands. But it's a weak move. Yes, he should go forward with the charges. I hope the prosecutors can actually go forward with it. And more than likely, she's not going to do serious jail time anyway if she's a first-time offender.
Yeah, she's not going to do any jail time, but this is about setting legal precedent. And that's the most important thing, because as a black man, I understand how dangerous it is out here for other black men, how dangerous it is. And I understand the danger that this woman was willfully and maliciously putting this Christian Cooper in. And that's why we needed to have this woman prosecuted. Even if she didn't get any punishment, it would lead to a legal precedent on the books. And that legal precedent on the books would deter the behaviors of these other Karens out here, and it would let them know that there's a line in the sand. And that's the most important thing,
right,
that everybody isn't getting, especially your Christian Cooper. He's so busy thinking about the crumbs he's going to get from his slave master's table that he doesn't understand that he wouldn't get, at the end of the day, white supremacy breaks its toys, and once it has no more use for guys, they're going to get rid of you one way or the other. And that's why you have to take a stand, because again, if you don't value your life, nobody else is going to. And his whole presentation really, it does great damage to black manhood and black masculinity's image, because he's not going to stand up and try to represent us. The thing is, the mainstream media has him as a representation of us, and everybody's going to think black men are cowards whenever you put them to the fire and put them under pressure. What happens is they crumble, collapse, and don't follow through. And that's not the case at all. If there was another black man out here, he would have come out here and stood strong, and he would have demanded that justice be served, because he understood that in the bigger picture, this is more than about him. This is about every other black boy, like the young man who 7 years, I think he was like 7, 8 years old. He brushed up against one of these white women in a store in Brooklyn.
I remember that. Yeah.
And she called 911. And this is about setting a legal precedent to let these women know they're not going to use law enforcement as their Klan on demand in the 21st century, and that they are going to be held accountable for their behavior. That is the most important thing that goes over the head of this Christian Cooper, this coward. He doesn't understand how he's making things dangerous for every other black man out here, and how he's putting other black men's life at risk. And the whole Christian concept really annoys me, because it clearly shows, as somebody who follows the living God, I understand about forgiveness, and forgiveness is not meant to be applied in this passive approach that people use in religion. Now, you have a lot of people out here who use this passive approach, where they believe that they have to forgive everyone, but that's not the case at all. If people are doing wrong, they have to be held accountable, because Jesus held the Pharisees accountable. He held the Sadducees accountable. He went into the church and knocked over the tables and the money changers. He held people accountable for their actions. And we, as followers of God, hold people accountable for their actions. That's the thing that people don't understand who follow religion. They want to follow a passive approach, but those who follow the living God, read the Bible, know that it's active. And if we're going to be Christ-like, Christ held people accountable, so we're going to hold people accountable as well when they are out of pocket, out of control, and are doing damage to other people. Because what this woman wanted to do unto Christian Cooper, he shouldn't want done to any other black man out here.
Most definitely. And I remember that incident you're talking about in New York about the little kid. Let's not forget the actually did not want to forgive the woman, but I remember a few days later they made him forgive, and I think that was pushed by his mother when that happened, when she said he supposedly grabbed her ass, when we all know that she had no ass at all to grab from the beginning, so it should have been case dismissed there. But you know, what you say is 100% correct on the forgiveness tip, because even in my faith as a Christian myself, we do believe in the Catholic faith. They do teach about the forgiveness of sins, and that's one of the things we hear in Apostles' Creed. However, that does not, and while you can be forgiven if you're truly sorry for something you've done, that does not mean that it goes without punishment or penance. You know, the priest will give you absolution, but will give you penance to do. There are things, and there are also actions and punishments that come from that. You know, just because you're sorry for killing a person, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get life in prison. We've seen countless videos, Shawn, of people who have committed double murders, and when they get found guilty, they'll read a letter in front of the family saying how sorry they are, but the family things like "I hate you," and or they may even say "I forgive you" in some instances, and those people are still sent to prison because they broke the law. And what's bottom line is that Amy Cooper broke the law when she made a false 911 call, and a precedent has to be set to protect the African American male, because you know as well as I, especially since you're a student of history, that white women have always used the police department historically as their Ku Klux Klan, or as their bouncers, I should say. and their bodyguards. We have situations where we can look at Emmett Till, where supposedly whistling at a white woman is what, even though it wasn't a legal, there was no legal right for them to do that, but that got him killed. George Steinme Jr., the youngest person to be executed in the United States at 14 years old for supposedly raping and killing a white woman. The Scottsboro boys, the Tulsa, Oklahoma race riots. I can go on. It all stems from that. And of course, most of these riots also start with the police departments as well. All riots have practically started because police officers engaging in the black community or doing something inappropriate. Primarily, I just saw the movie Detroit a few weeks back after I was talking with a fellow, well, he's not a fellow, but a former retired police officer, where he made that comment about police officers being the cause of the race riots that have started here in America. And traditionally speaking, especially in the last 55 years or so, he is correct. If you look at all of the major riots from Watts and Detroit and Los Angeles and so forth. And currently here, what we see with Atlanta and Minneapolis. But, yes. But getting it back to Chris Cooper, certainly if this were the military and he displayed this type of cowardice, in the military back in the day, if you were a coward and you ran out on your infantry or you failed to fire any shots, they would actually not only court-martial you, but you would be executed for things like that. And of course, let me just be clear, because I got to do the disclaimer. I'm not advocating any harm or violence to Mr. Cooper. I just want that to be clear, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm wishing anything on him. You know how social media is, Shawn.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but I'm just giving you an example. We are, as black people, we are at war right now. There are things that are happening that have been going on to black people in this country, and we are not doing anything about it. And just disgusted by this man's actions, because he has a perfect opportunity to set an example. So,
yeah, he had a perfect opportunity. He threw it away, and that's the most troubling thing, is that here we have an opportunity to get justice for black people, but because we've had the wrong people in place, they do more damage to black people long term than anything else. And that's what's really troubling here, because he, instead of looking at himself as black first, he's seeing himself as alphabet first, not understanding that white supremacy doesn't see him that way.
why do you think that is? I want to interrupt you on that, because I saw earlier today you mentioning a good point about alphabet first. I saw, and I want to ask you about that, because the new Batwoman, Tariq Nasheed, actually posted this on Twitter earlier today. I'm going to put it up right now for everybody. And there's a reason why I'm putting this up here, Shawn, where they highlighted this. And she's a beautiful black woman. Well, not even black. She's just a beautiful woman, period. But she's a beautiful woman. And I'm trying to think of the sister's name. I know you follow the comic book world. And
Well, her name is Javicia Leslie, I believe. Javicia Leslie.
Okay, hold on. I'm about to pull it up right now. Javicia Leslie. She's gorgeous. Let me just put a picture up of her so everybody can see right now. Okay. So that is her. You can see it, guys.
Yeah, I can see it.
She's a gorgeous woman. So she says, this is the quote here. Javicia Leslie is a new Batwoman. This is Variety. I am extremely proud to be the first black actress to play the iconic role of Batwoman on television. What's up, Justin Jack? And as a bisexual woman, I am honored to join this groundbreaking show. So I mentioned why I stopped you, Shawn, right there, because that was a good point. Didn't want to forget myself. Is that why is it when we see these new TV shows and you watch, I don't care if you watch an Amazon or what network you're watching, whether it's Amazon Prime or Netflix or even CBS or NBC, why is it that they always highlight a person's sexuality? Because I wouldn't even know, like I've never heard of this sister before, but I would never even know she was bisexual or if a person was gay unless they came out in the open and actually said something. Why do we keep seeing, why do they keep highlighting that?
Well, they keep highlighting it because they're desperate to get viewers and they think that sex sells. Unfortunately, people just aren't interested in sex as related to these superhero shows. And it shows how little substance this show has in terms of story, because they want to push this identity politics in the hopes of appealing to viewers. But that didn't work, in the first season. In fact, that show, Batwoman, got less views than top YouTubers like Jenna Marbles and PewDiePie. I mean, this show performed extremely poorly. I mean, I even saw an MRE channel that gets more views on its shows, its videos, than this Batwoman show. And now that this show is doing poorly, what they want to do is hope to pander to the black audience, because they know they have failed to win over the comic fans who used to watch these Berlanti superhero shows. They got completely turned off. They were practically roasting this show since the trailer. And now that the first season is over, and if the show has been practically trashed by those fans and they've said they're not coming back, now they're hoping to try to salvage this second season with a black audience. So they're basically insulting black viewers by getting this black woman to be Batwoman. And they want to use this black woman as an effort to try to get black viewers to come watch this show, which has already failed with many comic fans due to its poor execution. And most people, they're saying that, look, the show was bad from minute one, but what they hope to do is try to use black audiences in an effort to bolster their numbers. And what they want to do is use us as pawns to sell the show, but we're not interested in watching the show because we already know that it's garbage already due to the complete way they treated Luke Fox, who was an alpha male in the comics, but they baited him in this show and emasculated him. So
you're talking about Luke Cage?
No, Luke Fox. He's in the show. He's Lucius Fox's son, and he was basically in the comics. He's an alpha male. He's a strong masculine. He's a boxer, and he was wearing the Batwing suit. But in this show, they had practically turned him into a butler. And here you're going to have this masculinized black woman, and you're going to have this effeminized black man. The whole show is an insult to black people, and they're not seeing that they're in their attempts to promote their diversity passively. We can see their racism aggressively, and that racism they're presenting aggressively is one of the reasons why the show failed the first time and why it's going to fail again in the second season.
Okay, guys, what's up, everyone? Hold on, we got some people in here. Justin Jack is watching. I see Leon Richard is watching. What's up, Dad? Yes, we've gone through various topics. Why is LGBTQ highlighted with every black actor and actress, and even just being pushed throughout? That was the earlier topic. Christian Cooper proves that simps are us. So we got a lot we're going into. But I just want to read some of the comments. First off, you guys, please donate to the Cash App at GavinRichardEsq. Keep it going, please. We got to shout out a few people. Claudel Marr is watching. What's up, Claudel? She says, good night. He has a white ABC partner. They are not our allies. Shawn James, Priest, the Information Man show says peace to both of us, Shawn. And Claudel also said that particular show was only about Batwoman's sexuality. The writing was poor. It was terrible with Ruby Rose as well. I've never watched. I don't watch CW, like talking about it anyway. CW was when UPN and WB merged, if I'm not mistaken, right? Years ago, that's how they came about.
Yeah, that's how they came together.
Yeah,
but the writing on the show has been terrible for years. For a year now, most comic fans. I watched a couple of episodes, but it just was unwatchable. I mean, the writing was just terrible. Everything was identity politics. Nothing was like the comic book whatsoever. I mean, the comic book is amazing. The Batwoman comic book was very well crafted, but they didn't use that. They wanted to push identity politics. They wanted to push her sexuality, and that's not a reason for anybody to care to watch the show. People came to the show for action and adventure, but all we got were these hour-long lectures about being tolerant and sexuality and all this stuff, and that's not what comic fans want to see in a superhero show.
Most definitely. I certainly think they don't hide it when they're talking about, with LGBTQ anymore. I mean, when they really want to push something, they're pushing it. Even this Me Too movement, not Me Too, excuse me, the Black Lives Matter movement. You and I have talked about that. I've talked with various people. Judge Joe Brown has talked about it, Tariq Nasheed, and countless others. Ron Hurd for We All Be News, and Dr. Randy Short especially, where this is basically a front for the LGBTQ movements. Yeah. And I saw that when I was watching Thor. Thor was on TNT this past Sunday. There was a commercial, Shawn, it was called Show Your Pride or something like that, or My Pride Flag. I'm paraphrasing, but it was like that. And it was various clips, and you can see of people at these protests holding signs, but the signs would say Black Trans Lives Matter, or Black Queers Matter. They would have, interlooped with parents and friends and loved ones or boyfriends, girlfriends, whoever, doing personal video saying, for my mother, for my father, for my brother, for my friend. And at the end it says My Pride Flag or something like that. Show your pride or something like that. And it was clear what they were talking about. And that commercial, though, that ran, I counted from the time I was watching Thor, it practically, every time it went to a commercial break, if commercial breaks throughout a 2-hour movie, let's say they may do 10 commercial breaks total, it damn near was there half the time or more in one of those commercial breaks. So they paid a lot of money to do that. And I know, especially when they have primetime shows and primetime movies like that, that costs a lot of change. And so they don't hide, any of this stuff anymore when they come out with it. And it has surpassed, obviously, the black movement. I don't say Black Lives Matter, but we could say things, if we want to replace it, I would say Black Lawyers Matter. That's what matters. Black loved ones matter. Black fathers matter. Yeah. Black mothers matter. That's what we should be focused. The Black family matters. And that has been lost in all of this. And they don't hide it. And so we're talking about that. And where I'm getting with this too is that when it comes to television and movies, as you know, it's propaganda. As Malcolm X says, media is the most powerful instrument in the world because it can make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent. And do you think, though, since they're losing more money from this, do you see a change that's going to happen where they're going to push back against this? Are you seeing people pushing back against it? Because I heard of some the television show The Chi, for instance. I've never watched it, but I've heard Leanne Waithe is the one who created it, and she is a known lesbian, but she has also been pushing. I noticed in movies like Queen and Slim and other. She was also a cartoon in one of the Disney characters who they made as a lesbian. She pushes that, and I heard there was a transgender actor that's on there. And one of the actors that was on The Chi was supposed to have a kissing scene. I was just listening to Tariq earlier, and allegedly he quit because he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it.
I'm seeing pushback because people just aren't buying this stuff. I mean, the whole thing is that 99% of the country is heterosexual, and they're not interested in watching this stuff. And they don't want their kids watching this stuff because they see it as not appropriate for younger children. And many of the people are just saying that they just don't want this kind of content. And no matter how much the alphabet community tries to force this type of content on people, they're just not interested in it. And that's why I say that this Get Woke, Go Broke is a fact, because it doesn't matter how much money you spend on this media trying to socially engineer these ideas as normal. The audience just isn't interested in buying those ideas. And the more you push them, the more the audience is going to push back. And that's why we're seeing companies practically losing money on all of these projects, and people and these companies going bankrupt, because sooner or later, this push by those in the alphabet community who have taken these executive and management positions, they're going to have to report to the board of directors. And when they start having these really poor profit margins, the bosses there are going to say enough is enough. Nobody's interested in your agenda, and it's either you or we're just gonna have to replace you, because we're not making money. And a business's ultimate goal is to make money. If you want to promote your agenda, you go promote your agenda with your own money, and you continue to lose your own money. I mean, if like what I do with the SJS Direct imprint, I take money usually from Patreon and donations and stuff, and I use that to finance my books. But I still have to go out here and again try to make enough to pull a profit on that product. And everybody else out here is accountable the same way. People eventually are not going to sit there and keep spending money on a product that's not making any money, because this is a business, and businesses are not about
money talks.
Agendas.
Money talks and bullshit walks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next thing I wanted to get in with you, Shawn, this was actually today. Let's see if you guys can see it. This was actually today. The president signed a Hispanic Prosperity Initiative. Now, this is an executive order that he signed. It's basically to give Hispanic communities, I guess, economic opportunities. He states specifically in here, my administration has also supported investment in economically distressed communities, including through opportunity zones and economic opportunities for small and minority-owned businesses. The initiative set forth in this order increases emphasis on the connection between educational and economic opportunities, and exploring and promoting opportunities for Hispanic Americans, both through and outside traditional education options that lead to economic prosperity. I won't read all of it. There's a lot, but you can go to the whitehouse.gov and actually look at this executive order. An executive order, basically, it's a binding in through federal law. Executive order, the president signs it. Once he signs it, it becomes law. It is enforced typically through the federal government. And, I think a lot of people, of course, as you know, Shawn, we've been talking about tangibles is what African-American community needs. We've been seeing these symbolic victories that you want to call it. NASCAR has taken down a Confederate flag. You also have Mississippi. They removed the Confederate emblem from their state flag. Confederate monuments have been ripped apart, as well as monuments of known slaveholders like I'm about to say Shawn James. I'm sorry. Slaveholders. I believe King Leopold was taken down, although he wasn't necessarily a slaveholder. He was the one that brutally massacred the people of the Congo for the diamonds. You've had Christopher Columbus's statues have been vandalized. Andrew Jackson, who was a slaveholder. There have been calls. I even read a headline where Thomas Jefferson's family is even calling for his monuments to be removed. Very interesting now. Even Ulysses S. Grant, who was a Union general and a former 16th president of the United, 18th president of the United States, if I'm not mistaken, he was. I remember civics. His statue, I think, was vandalized and removed, as well as Frederick Douglass. You did a story on that. When do you think it'll be time, or should this not be the time for Black people to demand tangibles? And do you think by this initiative, this is a way to silence the Black and Brown, quote unquote, Black and Brown coalition that exists here in America?
Well, they're showing us that there is no Black and Brown coalition, first of all, because let's look at what President Trump is doing. He knows that he won 30% of the Hispanic vote. And now he's trying to galvanize that base by offering them tangibles. But when we look at his actions, they show how little respect he has for the Black community, because he's not offering any tangibles to the Black community at all. I mean, when he goes to the Hispanics, he's got his tangibles together. He's signing executive order to give them economic resources. But when it comes down to Black people, all we get are empty slogans, empty symbolic gestures, and things that mean absolutely nothing. And part of that is our fault, because we don't demand tangibles. We don't have Black leadership that sits there and says, I want such and such tangibles for my community. I want investment in programs for Black fathers. I want investment in employment for Black people. And I want investment in resources that will bring money and jobs to Black communities in exchange for votes. And it shows how people still take the Black vote for granted on both sides. And it also, again, shows that there is no Black-Brown coalition, because the Hispanics are getting tangibles on their own from the president, but Black people aren't even considered for anything except some donations to the NAACP, a organization not created by Black people. And you also—
No, it was not.
And you
was
see
not my dues.
Donations to Black Lives Matter, which is not a Black organization. And we see no talk about supporting or building Black-owned businesses like my SJS Direct Imprint and many other Black-owned businesses. We see nobody talking about things to help Black people at all. And again, it shows how still in this 2020 election, people still take the Black vote for granted. And they're not offering any tangibles because they think that they have the Black vote showing up. But Black people have to show them how important the Black vote is on both sides by just staying home.
Yes, I just want to say to Information Man Show says there's never been a Black and Brown coalition, brother. That's an illusion. That's why I put it in quotes. Black. It said quote unquote Black and Brown coalition, because it certainly, if the closest has ever been a Black and Brown coalition, if anything like that, I don't know, maybe in a boxing ring. That's the close. That's the close when Bernard Hopkins and Oscar De La Hoya get together and promote a fight. I mean, that's about the closest thing that I know of. I'm not saying, of course, that that there aren't people who don't sympathize with each other, but of course, we do not have allies. I believe in our community to help our communities. Per se, we've never had those. Even those that supposedly fought with Dr. King in the Civil Rights Movement, those were individuals. I'm talking about a population of a group of people. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that here in the United States, not even from the Native American community. And speaking of which, Shawn, I was checking out Forbes.com. There was an article, I don't know if you saw it, I'll share it with the group, but they basically talked about, Forbes did an entire article about Black people and this being the time for reparations. This is an article. I'm going to read this to you guys quickly. Hold on. It says I got it. Sorry about that. Okay. I have my ad blocker up. But all right. This is an actual article. And it says the same thing we've been talking about. Thanks for symbolic gestures, but we need Black people need reparations. This was by Janice Kassam. She's a senior contributor to Forbes. Okay. And she states, of course, I can't read all of it, but it would take a while. But she says, America is finally waking up from its 400-year slumber, and an honest acknowledgement of racism is happening. The public's opinion on Black Lives Matter has shifted vastly in the last 2 years. It was recently announced that the definition of racism will officially be changing, and there is now a reevaluation of American English vernacular and terminology that is commonly used but has racist origins. From Boston to Belgium, racist monuments are being torn down. The world is currently undergoing a racial reckoning. There has been a recent trend of painting Black Lives Matter murals along different streets and cities across the United States. Black Lives Matter is not a black-run organization, but okay. While the symbolic gestures are nice and make for great photo ops, to even begin to scratch the surface and atone for the wrongs of a country founded on genocide and slavery, reparations are a necessary starting point. So I agree with the sister. Now, she breaks down several things, Shawn. She states here, restitution for the nation's wrongdoing is not a foreign concept. She highlights America's history of reparations, including the Hawaiians Homes Commission Act of 1920. This gave Hawaiians the opportunity of land as a way to rectify the wrongful seizure of Native Hawaiian land during the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii. President Clinton issued an apology for the U.S. role in the 1893 overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy. In 1946, the Indians Claim Commission was created to address and compensate indigenous people for the mistreatment of their people and their seizure and stealing of indigenous land. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act. The act granted survivors of Japanese internment camps $20,000 of reparations per person, and Reagan issued a formal apology for the United States role for incarcerating and detaining Japanese people. So she states even here that the U.S. House of Representatives issued an apology to Black Americans for slavery, but offered no tangible forms of compensation or reparations that have been given. What we have seen a lot of, donning kente cloths, constructing murals, and tearing down Confederate monuments. While these actions are meaningful, they do not deconstruct oppressive systems or provide any sort of restitution for the greatest atrocity in American history. Although slavery ended over a century ago, the remnants are still being felt by Black Americans today. And she highlights for the evidence such as racism that permeates every system from housing to education, the Black people whose lives have been stolen because of false convictions and false allegations, and even the staggering racial disparities in maternal mortality rates, systematically disadvantaging a racial group for hundreds of years and then finally allow them to be free, only to question why they've had challenges transcending the inequitable systems that you designed is abhorrent, to say the least. A few ways that the U.S. can start to rectify the transgressions of its past are as follows. She states cash payments. And she gives an example how the United States government delivered over $2 trillion in economic relief in the wake of the COVID-19 situation. She also says that the United States can learn from Germany and South Africa when the apartheid system was created for nearly 50 years. Well, excuse me, not created nearly 50 years, but it was the law for nearly 50 years in South Africa. And the TRC, the Commission of Truth and Reconciliation, was a group designed to investigate gross human rights violations. So you guys get the picture on this. And they issued $3,500 annually for 6 years to the families that were suffering or that were victims of that. Free college tuition. She mentions this here. Land allotments. I'm not going to read all of it, but those three things. And specifically, of course, what's interesting, Shawn, that 40 acres and a mule, I was going to mention this too. That was Special Order 15 from William T. Sherman, who, of course, marched through Georgia and into Atlanta. And that's where the term 40 acres and a mule came from. And Andrew Johnson, who is arguably considered the worst president in United States history, historians have ranked him that he was sympathetic to the South and reversed that order. So if you want just briefly, just to, I guess, go on what the sister was talking about, and I'll post that article for everybody here to take a look at. Shawn?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted you to
All right.
Your 2 cents.
All right. Well, I do believe we should have reparations for Black people. I mean, that this is not only about rectifying the issue of slavery, but it is also about rectifying ongoing discrimination because Black men like myself, we have been denied access to the job market. We have been denied opportunities to get employment and actions that were meant to reconcile past discrimination, like affirmative action. We've seen those jobs go to white women, and we've seen them go to other so-called women of color. So we are due reparations, and the United States government can easily pay reparations because we look at it. They were able to spend $2 trillion on this COVID-19 pandemic, so they can spend another $16 trillion reconciling past of slavery and also the current and ongoing discrimination that Black people suffer. And that's something that the government could easily do and should be able to easily do. I mean, there's no excuse for it now, as I see it, because we have the resources, we have the money, we have all of the tools to do this. But the only thing that stops people from doing this is basically the government just doesn't want to do it because they don't want Black people to have economic empowerment because they fear that with Black economic empowerment, there will be competition. And many of the
Right.
comfortable white people and the comfortable non-Black people who have made money on the 3.3 trillion cash and credit that Black people have spend over time, they wouldn't be able to make that money anymore because they would have to deal with an economic engine that would be on the level of possibly some of these other countries out here. And that's why they don't want to give us reparations because they fear Black economic empowerment, they fear Black wealth, and they fear that they won't be able to have a base to feed off of and be able to get 98% of their resources out of every year.
Most definitely, and Judge Joe Brown and I, we've talked about this and gone back and forth. I disagree with my brother because he says it's like reparations is like the lottery. Don't rely on it, and I understand that. But hey, give us what the fuck we owe. This is what we're owed, and I say that to anybody. If those groups can get that, if the Japanese Americans who come over here, to get unclaimed benefits, just like every other minority, to Iran, whether you're talking about Arabs or you're talking about Koreans or you're talking about any other group, they've benefited off of the blacks of Black people because we were the ones that put in the work in building this country and also the laws that were enacted, like the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and 78, which got dismantled, by the way, as well as the Civil Rights Act of 64. Those were passed because of us. And we are not benefiting from that anymore. And so, we are entitled to it. Now, I understand that it's the aspect of people saying, well, you shouldn't just rely on it. No, it's not about relying on it. No, I don't rely on it at all. I'm still building my own as best as I can and to the best of my ability. But this is what we are owed. And if other groups can get this, if you can actually do, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there was a symbolic gesture that the House of Representatives did where they passed a reparations bill for LGBTQ with regards to removing terms like how spouses, terms like husband and wife on the floor of Congress. They removed that from certain bills, especially these income tax bills, because if you that were passed. Because if you remember before with the Defense of Marriage Act, that prevented, that only defined marriage as a man and a woman and husband and wife. Well, now, for those 3 years, when you had the Defense of Marriage Act that was still enacted, because part of it got struck down. It did get struck down eventually in 2013, and then subsequently in 2015, that's when the Supreme Court ruled that homosexual marriage is legal. Then that destroyed that bill. So during that period, they couldn't file taxes as husband and wife and wife. So they passed a symbolic, reparations inside the House chambers. They did that for them.
Yeah. So it seems like they can always do stuff for other people, everybody but black people, and if they'll do that deliberately, as I see it. They don't want to do things for black people.
Right, most definitely it is deliberate. If they really wanted to do it, they could do it in an instant. But instant, if they wanted to. I saw not Robert Smith, but Robert Smith did say something, as well as Bob Johnson, where they had been talking recently about reparations. I think Bob Johnson said it should be like 20 trillion for in regards to reparations. And say what you want about Bob Johnson, especially with BET and so forth. I know they've had issues with that, but he did I agree with him on that aspect. So next thing I wanted to talk about to you. Oh, hold on one second. I think we might have a visitor show.
Okay.
All right. Shout out to everyone. Information Man Show says truth. Right on, brother. The next topic, Shawn, I wanted to talk about is this one. We've talked about this before. Is just recently, about 2 weeks ago, Bill Cosby's appeal was granted. They did not grant the actual appeal, and let me just clarify: they granted the appeal hearing to take place. And I wanted to know what your thoughts were about it. A lot of people, this raised a lot of eyebrows for some people with regards to that. Some have even questioned his guilt and innocence. And of course, the mainstream media, I've seen some people that actually still think that they've attacked Camille Cosby because she's saying I don't know if you saw the Daily Mail, but they were saying, well, the case and evidence in this thing was clear. It was cut dry, cutthroat. So I want to know what your thoughts are, Shawn, about it.
Well, first off, I'm very happy to hear that Bill Cosby's getting a hearing for an appeal, because that court case was a travesty of justice. I mean, Bill Cosby was railroaded by a malicious prosecutor. A judge, we're finding out more and more, was clearly biased. And this case sets dangerous legal precedent, not just for black men, but for men in society, because it makes it where a woman's word practically can lead to a man becoming arrested, prosecuted, and convicted based on simply a woman's allegations, not based on any hard evidence. And that interpretation of the law is as dangerous as the Dred Scott case and the Plessy versus Ferguson case in terms of a legal precedent. So this case, I'm glad that it's being heard by a Philadelphia Court of Appeals, but I really do believe it's going to have to go to federal court.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pennsylvania court. But I'm really thinking, because the state court is so corrupt, that it's going to have to go to federal court to get this case really thrown out, because there are clear violations of the federal United States Constitution when I look at the due process that was violated, and how this case really just strips people of due process under the law. I mean, that's the other argument that I believe Cosby really needs to talk about, because if we can't get due process under the 4th and 6th Amendment, and a woman can just come in with an allegation,
right,
then our Constitution is worthless, because that means no man is safe on any job or any social situation, and a woman can just come in with any claim from anywhere with no evidence whatsoever to substantiate these claims, and a man's life can practically be destroyed based on those allegations. Now, I also saw some information online where this Essence magazine talking about Bill Cosby's legacy.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I see plans on trying to demonize Bill Cosby. There was also a woman coming out with allegations against Bill Cosby. So there are people still trying to destroy Bill Cosby's legacy, and trying to destroy Bill Cosby overall, trying to maliciously, as I see it, with malice of forethought, trying to destroy Bill Cosby. And it clearly, again, shows the malice of forethought being presented as related to this case. And I wanted to do a video on it, but I've just been so busy with different content. But
right.
I wanted to I wanted to go in depth on it, but
Me too.
this case, people don't understand. This doesn't just about a black man. It's just not just about Bill Cosby. It's about all men in society. Because if this legal
Right.
precedent stands, there won't be anywhere for a man to be able to even get any sort of protection under the law. And every man out here can practically be put in jail based on the word of a woman. And these Me Too women, basically, a lot of them are doing this because they know that they have hit the wall. They know that they can no longer trade resources in exchange for their bodies anymore. And they know that their prospects are getting to become slim to none. Just like the Karens out here, they know that they don't have much prospects with men. So they want to make these allegations in order to get some sort of payday for themselves at their expense. And these racists, they want to use Bill Cosby to they want to use Bill Cosby as a weapon to destroy other black men. And they want to use this legal precedent to go after other black men. But what they don't see is that these Me Too women are trying to destroy them as well. So this legal precedent, it really needs to be taken down because it's destroying the lives of everyone in America. And it's making it where men and women are not going to be able to even be able to socially interact in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, this has made it more difficult, very difficult for black men in particular. I know you've done videos on it as well. And it's like once he was convicted, as you saw, and I've always talked about it, it seemed like every other black actor they went after, like Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman was accused, and then Cuba Gooding Jr. And, most recently, although they haven't done anything sexually, Katie Couric tried to do a driving run on Denzel Washington. About the way he talked to her or something like that, trying to make her out to be a victim when it was clearly a nothing burger. And yet she was never disciplined. She was never called out by mainstream media. And I have this clip up, Shawn, because I want you to pay attention to, this is the problem with mainstream media, guys. I want everybody to pay attention to exactly how hard it was for this woman to say, to talk about this. Just look at her body language and what she says, and we'll stop from there. It's a short clip, so I want you to listen.
Looks like Bill Cosby, he's going to get another day in court. A Pennsylvania court ruled yesterday that the actor will be allowed to appeal. Currently serving a 3 to 10 year sentence for drugging and sexually assaulting a woman at his home in 2004. And a lot of people are talking about his wife and what Camille Cosby would say. Well, recently she did speak about his conviction, calling it racially motivated. This is what she told ABC News, quote, "The Me Too movement and movements like them have intentional ignorance pertaining to the history in particular of white women who have from the very beginning accused black males of sexual assault without any proof whatsoever." Wow, Brandon, there's so many layers to this story. I just want to say it off the top. Of course, there's a disproportionate amount of men of color who have been victims of false accusations. Of course, there's a disproportionate amount of men of color.
Watch her body language. Look at it.
Because of false accusations, historically speaking, from white women. But in this case, Brandon, there is evidence. And yes, we're only focusing on one woman because the other 4 women, their statute of limitations ran out, but there are 4 women who have all shared the same story. Brandon.
Let me just stop it right there. They did not share the same story, lady. They did not share the same story. Their stories were completely different. Every one of them, if you looked and paid attention very carefully, they all do not say the same thing. Lou Ferrigno's wife didn't say Bill Cosby tried to rape her. Neither did Christy Ruley. She changed her story multiple times. All of their stories, some of their stories, at least most of them, did not make any sense. I'm going to play the video again.
Absolutely. And I agree with Ms. Cosby and I agree with you as well, saying when it comes to disproportionately black men that had been locked up because of this. And she mentioned the Emmett Till, and she mentioned that it was a white woman that said that a black man had said something to her for the Tulsa riots as well. But I believe in this case, I'm glad that it's going to the highest court in the state of the Supreme Court, because if you think about it, Bill Cosby had a testimony in a civil court that he was supposed to get immunity to. So I want, if it goes to this highest court and this appeal gets knocked down, then we can throw out that case of, oh, there's racism involved with it, and just say that, hey, you were allowed your day in court and your appeal. And we'll see what happens after the Supreme Court reviews this.
Negro, what are you saying, Negro? That last part, you were doing fine up until that last part. I'm gonna get back to it.
You know, you're right, Brandon. You're absolutely right. But I also do worry about further re-victimizing. You know,
yes,
4 dozen alleged victims. I have to say alleged. I guess now that it's brought back up in the court system.
Yeah, but here's the problem: they were never brought to court. Not one of them. They never went to court. It's alleged because they never went to court. There was no trial in all of these women's cases. They did not go to the police, make a police report. The police never investigated. Those that were investigated, like a Chloe Goings, she was proven to be a damn lie. She was proven to be a fucking lie because the DA looked into it when she said she was molested. She didn't even allege rape. Let's be clear, because I don't know that lady's name from the Daily Mail, but whoever it was, whatever her name is, you can tell. And you read the comments, Shawn.
Yeah.
If you read the comments, wait, hold on. Let me put it back up. I'm going to see. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me zoom in. But you look at the comments, how you going to agree? This is just a few. I hope he sues every one of those women who lied on him after 40 years. Free that innocent man and put those lying women behind bars. Well, how you're going to ignore with both sides, black people get re-victimized every day by people like you. Forgive me if I don't feel sorry. Excuse me. It looked like it was hard for that woman to say allegedly, and she couldn't help but try to push the narrative of the abundance of women that accused him. It was. She hates to report this. She knows this is a new beginning of Cosby's story. The truth is coming. Free Bill Cosby, free Bill Cosby. David Chauvin could appeal right after the arrest. I'm sorry. What is this woman talking about? What evidence? Exactly what evidence? There was no rape kit. There was nothing.
Well, when I look at that report, there was no objectivity whatsoever in the journalism. There was no objectivity. I mean, this was a clearly biased report, and she was expressing opinion, and that's just not professional for a journalist to participate in. That's not what a professional does when they are on the air. And when I looked at that, I was really disgusted by it, because if she was expressing clear bias for this case, and that's not what a professional journalist does. They try to present the facts and they let you to make your own decision. And there was no objectivity here. I mean, clearly somebody in the mainstream media is out to get Bill Cosby by presenting these type of reports. I mean, when you look at the facts, there was no crime in any of these cases, no charges filed, no evidence whatsoever. All these are allegations. And again, allegations are not something you can, unless you're going to a prosecutor's office with a police report and a prosecution, there's nothing anybody can say that was done.
No, there's nothing. And, if they did a little bit more research, they would realize, number one, Andrea Constant, even after the supposed assault occurred, and you know this as well as I, she telephoned Bill Cosby over 77 times. She had dinner at his house even afterwards. She got concert tickets to his show. The other aspect of it too, the women that testified, Shawn, especially Janice Dickerson, for example, keep in mind that they had a monetary interest in that case, because if Bill Cosby gets convicted, it would make it much easier for them to proceed with their lawsuits. that they had a lawsuit pending while they were giving testimony. So that should have automatically
disqualified them as witnesses.
Automatically disqualified them, exactly, as witnesses, because their credibility is shot at that point. And Tom Mesereau, and I've interviewed him and talked with him, Scott Ross, I've talked with him. This judge did not give any reasoning why he allowed 5 women in this case, but allowed 1 woman in the previous trial, the first trial, because this was Bill Cosby's second trial. The first trial ended with a mistrial. So that woman and that Negro up there didn't know what the hell they were talking about. He tried to stay on code with it, as you saw, if you paid attention to him. But then he was like, well, we can't claim any racism if it gets knocked down. Negro, what is wrong with you?
There is racism. I can clearly see
racism.
See what Camille is saying, because this is, again, this prosecutor is malicious, this judge is malicious, and they are using race as a reason to prosecute Bill Cosby because they want to present him as the black brute, and they want to present him as this black brute that everybody needs to be afraid of, but they don't. Then they want to revise the narrative to make him a bad guy when they don't want to look at the whole aspect of the story objectively and see how these women were complicit in their actions. Because if you look at the evidence objectively, you can see how these women were complicit, how they went along with Bill Cosby, how they wanted to get things like auditions, how they wanted to get roles. And this is par for the course in Hollywood. And what happened here is these women got their encounter with Bill Cosby, but now they're mad because they didn't have the career that they wanted. And now they want to revise the story to make themselves out to be victims, but they're not victims. They have to be made responsible for their choices because there was no crime committed. I mean, when you look at Andrea Constam, if this man assaulted you like this, why are you still maintaining a relationship with him? I mean, if this man did you this wrong, you would have gone to law enforcement on the first encounter and you would have filed a police report back then, not look to go and continue to have a relationship, file a lawsuit, get a $3.5 million settlement, and still continue to pursue this man. It just does not fit the pattern and the profile of somebody who has been sexually violated. If somebody's been sexually violated, they want to get justice and they want to see this man put away so he won't harm somebody else. And that would be their main motivation. I mean, why would somebody wait all of these years? That's another critical question to go after Bill Cosby. And why would a judge allow these witnesses to come in when they have ulterior motives and their testimony is basically hearsay? And if their testimony is hearsay, then it shouldn't even be allowed in court, because unless it pertains to the facts of the case, which is what I've learned is supposed to be the standard, then that testimony shouldn't even be allowed in the court at all.
It should not have been allowed just because of the fact that there was an agreement with the prosecutor not to prosecute. He made that promise. It was given to his attorneys, Bill Cosby's attorneys. It was written in an email. It was also stated outside in a press conference. I'm actually commenting on this post as well, on this video as well as we speak. And at this point, I'm not shocked, but with the thing with the black man saying that there's no racism, I'm like, what's wrong with you, Negro?
He's just in the same dysfunctional state as Christian Cooper.
Right.
He's looking to lick some boots of white supremacy, not understanding that once they finish with you, they're going to get rid of you. And he doesn't understand that he's on his way. He doesn't understand that his agreement to submit to white supremacy will sooner or later lead to him being in the same boat as Bill Cosby, because when white supremacy has toys, they break them so that they don't get in the hands of other people, and they break them because they don't want them again to be anywhere out here to be a threat to their institutions. So these bootlicks, they think that they're going out here and being this standing up for these white races, but these white races, they have a final fate that they don't even know is not going to be good for them at the end of the day.
And that white woman, she's a Karen. She's a 911 call away from being a Karen.
Yeah.
That was complete. Yeah, it was completely no objectivity. It was no impartiality. It was completely one-sided.
Yeah, it was just biased. There was no facts in that at all. I mean, when I do reports, I try to be objective. When I do write stories, I try to be objective, and I saw no objectivity in that at all. I mean, a journalist would look at that and say that there's something seriously wrong with that whole report.
Right.
I mean, it was all opinion, not one fact at all, and no abilities for the person to draw their own conclusion from those facts.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and most definitely, we're seeing that often in the media, and I think where it comes from is that, as you know, Shawn, media is run by corporate interests now. So those corporate interests are what dictates what the anchors and journalists are going to say. When I watch CNN, I already know if the first thing I know you're going to talk about is Donald Trump, I don't watch it. I know when my parents, if you watch CNN, like my parents watch it all the time, you would think the end of the world is coming because everything they highlight is about Trump, 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 Trump. And of course, Fox News is just the same way, except they are pro-Trump,
Yeah.
the left. And media is not supposed to be like that.
That's due to the Telecommunications Bill of '96, and that's a bill I really want to see repealed, because what we're seeing in the media is extreme bias, no facts, no objectivity, and I'm deeply disgusted. I can't even watch the news anymore because it's 90% Trump bashing and no sort of critical examination of the facts. I mean, I was watching ABC News and they were talking about COVID, and they focused mostly on red states with the COVID increase in cases, but they always leave out California, and I found it to be quite troubling. I mean, you don't talk about California because it's a Democrat state, but then you talk about Texas and all these other states and Florida with Republican governors, and that clearly shows no objectivity as related to this increase in COVID cases and any sort of objectivity as related to the facts as related to COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, right. You've got to, and I think this is also going to set up the downfall of the Democratic Party. It's already happened It happened in 2016, and I think it's going to come crashing in 2020 because I truly believe that I have a feeling Donald Trump is going to get reelected. That's my gut feeling. I don't think Biden is not exciting when you think about him.
He's presented a really weak agenda and a weak platform, and he doesn't give you an incentive to vote for him.
No, there's no incentive to vote for him. But of course, the narrative is that, especially from our elders in our community, is that if you don't vote, you hurting yourself if you don't support.
Well, their whole argument is Donald Trump is bad, but that's not an argument. You have to have an agenda and a platform and a vision for where you want to go. The whole thing is that your Joe Biden has not presented any arguments to why we should vote for him outside of he's not Donald Trump. And as I've said on numerous videos, that's just not an argument. I mean, you have to present what you're going to offer that you're going to do differently. And he's not really presenting anything. I mean, I listened to him on ABC News. He was talking about jobs program, and it really was just so poorly done. Not the whole thing is it was just so poorly done that he didn't look like he had a real plan. I mean, just like his Lift Every Voice, there's nothing there as related to tangibles, nothing there as related to an economic plan, nothing there as related to a vision. He's just, I'm not Donald Trump. And again, that's not an argument that's going to sell you. It's like going into a job interview and saying, I'm a nice guy, hire me. But people don't need a nice guy. They need people who can do the job and have a set of skills to do the job. And if you cannot present to me how you're going to do the job, then you're not qualified to do the work for me and get my money.
Right. It's just like a standard job. If you're not qualified, if you don't meet the necessary qualifications, if you don't have the necessities to do a position, to handle this position and do this job, then I'm not going to hire you. But unfortunately, when it comes to voting, we often don't get that. We get the Martin Luther King would have wanted you to go vote crowd that always says something. And they point their finger at black children, the young black people here in America, like myself. And I do vote. I'm actually registered. And if anything, I think more black people should be registered to vote for this purpose, which is to serve on juries. I think that that's very important that more African Americans be jurors, because who knows, you might end up on a case like an Ahmaud Arbery shooting, or Rayshard Brooks shooting, rather. Although Ahmaud Arbery shooting took place in a predominantly white area where, that was just the Klan's area, Shawn. But this is the actual article from Yahoo News. I'm just going to read a little bit to everyone right quick. Perry Green doesn't believe that Joe Biden is listening to what young black Americans want right now. Across the country, young people are protesting systemic racism and calling on political leaders to reallocate funding from local police to other community resources. Green, who is black, criticized Biden for not supporting the defund the police movement that many activists support. You got black youth across the country calling for defunding the police and thinking differently about law enforcement. And a couple of days later, in the midst of all the protests, Biden's campaign says, let's spend more money on community policing. And I think Biden, another thing that's going to hurt Biden, just a side note too, is, he's already made it clear that, and some of my colleagues who are going to vote for him anyway, they feel he's hurt himself by saying or dedicating that he's going to have a woman, and now they want a woman of color as the vice president. I see the Keisha Lance Bottoms, mayor of Atlanta, is being considered. I believe Susan Rice, who threatened Snoop Dogg, if you remember, a couple of months ago over the Gayle King incident, but she was the former ambassador under Barack Obama. I believe Elizabeth Warren is also being considered. There's Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris, let's not forget, she was against Joe Biden when they were running against each other just last year for the Democratic seat. So it's all politics and BS at the end of the day. I'm going to post the article. I won't read all of it. But I want to know just quickly, Shawn, if you could give your thoughts. What do you think of the idea of Keisha Lance Bottoms or any black woman be vice president? I think we've talked about this before when we showed we talked about that video that they did on that was on the Washington Post, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of months. But I certainly. Do you think he has a shot?
I don't think he has a shot. And these vice presidential candidates, clearly, they're out of their league. I mean, Keisha Lance Bottoms couldn't handle those riots in Atlanta and practically shut down during those riots as related to the murder of that young man in Atlanta. Rayshard Brooks. I mean, she practically let the city get out of control and practically let Black Lives Matter lead to the deaths of other black people. So if you can't handle what's going on in your own city as related to a civil unrest, how can we trust you in a situation with the global crises in places like North Korea and Iran? Are you going to shut down when the pressure comes down on you? Are you going to fall apart when the pressure is on you? I mean, if you can't handle this local crisis, how can we have you be one step away if Joe Biden passes away and be the leader of the free world? I mean, if he loses his life and you have to take that oath, or if you can't handle these local crises, how can I put you in a global crisis? And when you're Susan Rice, I mean, if you're going to get emotional over something Snoop Dogg says on social media, that to me disqualifies you from that position, because if you're going to get emotional and take it personal as related to a position somebody makes on social media, then I can't trust you in a situation where we have diplomats here, tense situations, and you have to be able to control yourself in a social situation with these diplomats who may say something that may offend you, and you have to have the tact and discipline and self-control in order to be able to navigate through your emotions. So that disqualifies, as I see it, Susan Rice for the position of vice president, because a vice president also is a diplomat. And if you cannot handle situations like social media, then how are you going to handle critical situations like dealing with people like North Korea, people like Iran, or even other countries like Iraq, Turkey, and all the other Islamic countries where there are tensions that are high, or even with the Russians? I can't trust her to be able to compose herself and be professional in that situation. And when I look at Kamala Harris, her record practically speaks for itself. So yes, these people want to push this diversity and trying to pander to get black votes, but these people clearly just aren't qualified for the position. And again, it just shows how disorganized the Democratic Party is as related to its candidates. They don't have a platform. They had 4 years to present an argument to why we should vote for them instead of Donald Trump, but they still have not presented any argument to that effect. And when you look at their vice president, he's just Obama 3.0, and giving us the same thing over and over again. It's the definition of insanity. You keep trying to do the exact same thing and expect a different result, but you have to offer something different if you hope to get the result of winning an election. And clearly, they weren't ready to win an election. And what's sad is you had 4 years after the fall of Hillary Clinton to really present an agenda. And these people practically, like a kid who didn't do his homework, want to say that somebody else's fault, but it's all their fault for not coming in and having a plan or an agenda to serve the American people.
Right. I think, what's up, Southeast Dusty? All the folks that are in here right now, we're hot and heavy. Please donate to the channel at the CashApp, GavinRichardEsq, or GooglePay, Gavin.G1@gmail.com. And support Shawn as well. Shawn's books, he has The Man Crisis, which is available on Amazon.com. He also has the John Haynes series, which you can also find there on Amazon, as well as various other retailers, I believe. Shawn?
Yeah, it's on Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play. I mean, you can get the John Haynes series books everywhere. I'm going to leave a link to the Temptation of John Haynes, which is the first book, in the chat. So if you want to start that series, you can start that series.
Yeah. I did want to ask you this, Shawn, because we were talking about symbolic victories just quickly. And you and I spoke about this. What do you think of the Redskins changing their name? Well, the Washington Redskins changing the football name, because that's been news last week. They've been trying to change it. I think there are talks even about other Native American imagery coming down, like the Cleveland Indians with the Chief Wahoo as well. Just wondering, I don't know if they said anything recently, but I'm sure that's coming, as well as possibly the Kansas City Chiefs as well. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's an empty and symbolic gesture, and it really doesn't do anything at the end of the day. I mean, these names really don't mean anything to some people. People have been going to see these games for 60, 70 years now, and changing the name of the team really, for decades. So they're sitting there, they're doing this again to try to show how politically correct they are. This is all symbolic, empty gestures meant to make people feel good, because the NFL is losing money, and the NFL has been losing money for some time. So they're trying to get the audience back to the product.
Right.
They want to do these gestures to get the audience back to the product. So that's what all this is about.
Yeah, and something I wanted to know too is also with them changing the name. I know that the NFL is proposing that before the start of the game they would do the Negro national anthem.
Yeah, that's some heavy pandering, and
that is.
And I have no interest in pandering. I mean, is this going to get?
That's worse than Hillary with the hot sauce on the Breakfast Club. Yeah. And you said it's going to get worse?
Yeah, it's going to get worse because the woke types and the corporations really, they want to commercialize this whole Black Lives Matter and all these protests so that they can profit at Black people's expense. They see that there's all these angry Black people, and what they want to do is get money out of their pockets. And I find it sad because you have all these black-owned businesses like my SJS Direct Imprint, and nobody's talking about supporting those businesses. But when big corporate businesses come along, people think they've actually achieved something, but you haven't achieved anything because all these corporations are doing is just making you feel good so you can continue buying the same old products. And that's what I see at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if it's a Quaker Aunt Jemima or a Quaker pancake mix or a pancake waffle mix. Quaker's still making money at your expense and not
Right.
bringing any jobs to your black
Exactly.
community. And they're not bringing resources back to your black community. So how is this helping you in the long term if they're just still with the same products, giving you the same products with a different name, but there are no brothers and sisters getting jobs, nobody talking about supporting black-owned businesses or offering qualified black people like myself, employment so that we can go out here and move our lives forward. I mean, this doesn't help anyone in the long term. People are still going to be going to NFL games, and many of the black players are still going to wind up getting
Honestly,
and injuries and no
honestly, I
support.
think that I'm sorry, but I just want to say honestly, I think white people are going to stop going to the games.
Yeah, well, they weren't going to the games for a while because a lot of people have complained about the quality of the play. That's what I hear from most of the people with the football is that they're not interested in it because the quality of the play is so bad. And it's not like it was in the days when I was watching the New York Giants back in 86, 1990, even to 2008. Just the game is not what it used
Right.
to be.
Well, there are different rules now.
Yeah.
Like it's a pass happy league. There are more limitations on what defensive players can do as far as whether interceptions as well as touching a receiver when they're supposed to touch them, because if they touch them past 5 yards, that's holding, or I'm sorry, if it's before 5 yards, it's holding. If it's after 5 yards, it's pass interference. I'm here in New Orleans with the Saints, and of course, a couple of years ago, it was basically the no call where you clearly saw a helmet-to-helmet hit before the ball came to the receiver, and it was Tommy Lee Lewis. And it was clearly, and the NFL is supposed to be big on no concussions and so forth. And, helmet-to-helmet shots are outlawed. But clearly you saw this on tape. Everyone saw it, and they didn't call it. And so a lot of people think that the game is rigged, and I've kind of been a little suspicious of it as well. I'm not going to lie. Even with basketball, there have been allegations. I know a referee talked about point shaving. That goes on. There's actually a book called Interference that was written in the late 80s by a guy named Dan Moldea about how the mafia influences the NFL. I've never read it, but I heard about it. And I believe, that existed because all of those guys, you got to remember too, Shawn, NFL players, when they started out, they weren't making that much money like today. I saw Patrick Mahomes got a $500 million contract, which means by the time he's 36, he'll have made $500 million. But he can't. But of course, in those contracts, there's things he can't do. So, he's going to make a lot of money at the end of the day staying with that team. So I'm thinking he's got to bring them like 4 or 5 Super Bowls within that time frame for the Chiefs, because the Chiefs haven't been in there. This was their first Super Bowl in 50 years.
Yeah.
When Hank Stram was the coach. Stram coached the New Orleans Saints later on. Yeah. But Shawn, at any rate, brother, I know if you got to do some other work, man, I didn't want to keep you but too long. But if there's something you want to talk about right fast, please go ahead and do so. I got everybody.
I'm about finished. The only thing I want to let everybody know again is you can pick up my books from the 2020 SJS Direct Catalog, ISIS, the main event, John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose, on Amazon.com right now in paperback and Kindle formats. And you can also find them on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And that's about it. And I'm going to be producing more videos on the Shawn James channel. I'm going to leave a link to the Shawn James channel so that you guys can sub to that channel. Let me see, where is it?
Yeah. Something I did, yeah, there we go. I actually have it right there in the headline. I said subscribe to the self-entitled YouTube channel.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, already there. The other thing I did want to mention too, just briefly, you had talked about Essence Magazine.
Yeah.
The gentleman that founded Essence Magazine, it's not Reginald. Is it Reginald Lewis? No, it's not him.
It's Gordon Parks.
No, it's not Gordon Parks.
It's not Gordon Parks. So I know he had a part in it.
Well, it was 4 individuals, and I was talking about this last week, but it was founded by black men.
Yeah.
And very rarely, I mean, of course, there had been black men on the cover of the magazine, but I've never even seen RuPaul on Essence Magazine. And in the past, Essence Magazine handled themselves with class. Essence Magazine is geared towards black women. That was their target audience, because black women are actually, the largest consumers of things in our community. They're the ones that buy everything. And so you think about it, of course, men do. It was Edward Lewis, I'm sorry. But Ebony Magazine, Ebony Magazine, Essence, you always saw those magazines are shells of themselves and on life support. And you had Bussy Porter. I got to talk about it on my podcast as well, because we got to root out the cowards and the sisters that are bringing down our community and masculinity, in particular, that are being propped up to demean black men.
Yeah.
And he's here on the cover of Essence Magazine. And what's interesting, since we're talking about Bill Cosby earlier, Bill Cosby actually was friends with Edward Lewis. And if I'm not mistaken, he owned, I think from what Nicole, shout out to Nicole's View, talked about, he had a part ownership in it at one point. Cecil Hollingsworth was another owner. Thank you, Southeast Dusty. And they did an article in that same magazine cover with Billy Porter on it. They talked about how Bill Cosby appeals. This doesn't grant him any mercy. Don't grant him any mercy, or he can't save his legacy and things of that nature. And if you could just very briefly, I think you touched on it, but that was something I wanted to mention. And if we could just
I can talk about that really briefly. I mean, I remember Essence Magazine, but Essence Magazine showed me what happens when black men are in charge of the black woman's image. We noticed that when black men were in charge, they were looking to elevate the black woman and show her black beauty, show her her intelligence, and show her as a respectable woman who they wanted to present as an ideal for a wife or a girlfriend. But over time, as feminists took over Essence, we started to see this push for the as I see it, these demeaning images of black women. And then we started to see this push for this homosexual agenda with this new owner who, as I see it, really is out of touch as related to.
He had to step down too.
Yeah, he has no idea what Essence is all about.
Hey, Shawn.
I mean, Essence is supposed to be about presenting us the essence of black beauty, the essence of the ideal of what black men see as a black woman, and showing us articles that would, because my sister had a whole bunch of these Essence magazines, and they were very positive and very empowering back in the 90s. But as we went to the 2000s and 2010s, it just turned into a feminist, far left magazine pushing all sorts of dysfunction, and it's a pale shadow of its former self. And the sad thing is, under a new black owner, it's just a terrible magazine when it could be something great in the hands of a visionary. I mean, there's so many young black girls out here who want a positive magazine that presents an ideal of black womanhood, but we don't have anybody there to present that overall. And when I think about those articles they present as like as related to Bill Cosby's legacy, that's propaganda, because as I look at Bill Cosby's legacy, it's not torn down. I mean, you have people like myself looking to preserve it, and just like I'm trying to preserve the legacy of guys like the late, great Dwayne McDuffie. And people are out here looking to continue to build on that legacy. But this magazine it's a pale shadow of its former self. And that's one of the things that really saddens me, is that it's being used to push propaganda and not used to empower and uplift people the way it originally was as a magazine. I mean, Essence in the 90s was a great magazine. It really was about helping our sisters out, empowering our sisters. I mean, when Susan Taylor was in charge of Essence, she did an amazing job on that magazine and presenting us stories about Black female issues. And she presented us, again, great pictures of Black beauty and showing us that our sisters were beautiful. But in the later years, it's just become a woke feminist propaganda piece and a misandrist piece. And this Billy Porter cover really shows how far off the track the magazine has gone in the last, as I see it, 20 years. I mean, it's no longer about uplifting Black beauty, because when you put an effeminized man on the cover of the magazine, it's a slap in the face to the Black women and the original mission of Essence magazine. Because the original mission that these men had was to uplift our sisters and show them as an ideal of beauty, to combat and compete with Cosmopolitan, because that was what this magazine was originally designed to do, to be their version of Cosmopolitan in some ways, but to present it about us and our empowerment. And this Billy Porter on it, again, complete slap in the face to Black women. But many Black women, because they are caught up in feminism, think that the gay community is about supporting them. But what they want to do is hijack your magazine and turn it into a platform for the gay agenda.
I got to say this point too, but isn't it I've always thought this was a contradiction, that you would be supporting the very group of individuals that would be your competition for your men. Like, you complain about, I hear women complain about how there's no good men in the world. You know, men ain't this, men ain't that. You know, I can't find me a man, but it's in some Black women, not all, but they will go and support the people that are actually like people that like men, like it's their competition.
Yeah, but that could be part of it.
I never understood that.
It makes no logical sense, but you know, women are emotional, so they're just thinking, I want to be fair, but there's no fair when it comes down to competition. When your competitors get an unfair advantage, they're going to use it against you. And that's something many of these people, these woke types and these leftists don't understand, is that nobody is fair in the world of business, and nobody is fair in the world of relationships. So what these alphabet people want to do is they want to hijack your magazines, hijack your publications, and push their agenda at your expense. And many of these Black men and women, they're not really seeing the big picture and understanding things, because they're caught up in this concept of fair. I want to do a whole show on that whole concept of fair, because a lot of people, they have it twisted about this whole concept of fairness. And just like I wrote in The Man Crisis about the beta male, he always thinks about fair, but the world isn't fair. Whenever somebody, again, gets that advantage, they're going to use it, and they're going to take that advantage and use it to benefit themselves. And they could care less about you as long as they're moving ahead. And if they have to move ahead at your expense, they'll do that and have no problem doing it.
None at all, man. And well, whenever you want to do that topic on relationships and so forth and fairness, I am happy to be honored to have me on.
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
I think it's good to have.
I was going to do that as my own private live stream or video, because Black people have this idea of fairness that really needs to be. They need to get away from that whole idea.
Right. Most definitely. Well, anyway, guys, Shawn, if you could just stay on for a minute, I'm going to end the broadcast for a second. But guys, that has been it for us. We want to thank our guest, Mr. Shawn James. Please subscribe to his channel on YouTube. Also, it's self-entitled Shawn James books, from the SGS series, like The Man Crisis and the John Hanks series. Shawn, it is a pleasure to have you on. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us again, my friend.
All right, thank you for having me on the show.
All right, thank you all for joining. Please subscribe to the channel, GBoot2786 and Gavin Richard and the ticker. And also, I would ask that you guys please donate to the channel as well. I have those available right now that you can see. If I can find my ticker, there it is. I got a lot of bands. Oh, there it is right there. The ticker at the bottom. You see the Cash App, Gavin Richard Esquire, and Google Pay, gavin.grewich1@gmail.com. Just to thank you, Information Man Show. I appreciate you being on here. Please subscribe to the channel. Southeast Dusty, thank you for providing that information. By the way, the company that owns Essence now is called the Sundial Brands, and Gordon Parks was the editor-in-chief at one point of Essence magazine. That's, I think, what you were referring to, Shawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gordon Parks, the late, great Gordon Parks. He was the editorial director for the first 3 years of circulation. So we don't have men like that anymore.
Yep.
So that's it for me. That's it for Shawn. Peace out. Love you guys. Peace.